And in the first 90 days, we went from 15,000 a month in revenue to $150,000 a month in revenue in just 3 months. And then eventually, I think about a year later, maybe 13 months later, we did 292,000 in top line revenue. If I were to go back, I would actually have built a software company and solved a problem in real estate that was more software related. But I didn't see an obvious idea there. So we had to run the Facebook ads and we had to go that model. And it's not that we didn't want to provide value, it's that we didn't obsess over it enough. Like, you have to be incredibly obsessed over solving a real problem for your customers and doing it better than anybody else. I learned actually the most valuable sales lesson I've ever learned in my life in not being a salesperson, but in being a buyer, actually. Like, what makes you a great salesperson? Well, ask yourself, what has made me buy things from people in the past?
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new, my name is Addy, and today we have a very special guest interview with the legend himself, Mr. Matt Shields. If you guys are in the agency or online business space, there's a really good chance you've seen some of his content. He's been crushing it, especially in the past year. So I'm truly excited for this episode, and I know he's going to be dropping an immense amount of value for you guys. So with that being said, Matt, welcome to the channel. It's an absolute pleasure having you on here. And for those who haven't come across your stuff before, I'll let you take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Addy, for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm excited to be your first American podcast.
Yes, sir.
So, let's go. Quick background on me. Oof. Left high school after 9th grade. Built my first agency when I was 17. I bought a course from a YouTuber for $597. I was 17.
Billy Wilson, right?
Good old Billy Wilson.
Yeah.
And I remember finding one of Billy's YouTube videos, becoming hooked on what he was talking about. He was making like $20K a month from his laptop, and I thought that was insane. And next thing you know, I'm getting hit with Billy Wilson ads, and I'm seeing his ads pop up on other YouTube videos. And I get taken to his funnel. I go through the whole thing. I watch his webinar, and I just felt like I could trust Billy. I learned actually the most valuable sales lesson I've ever learned in my life in not being a salesperson, but in being a buyer, actually. Like, what makes you a great salesperson? Well, ask yourself, what has made me buy things from people in the past? What made me buy from Billy was trust. I just trusted the guy. And I watch his webinar. I go to my mom the next day and I say, Mom, I'm not going to college. I found this guy on YouTube. He's making $20K a month, and he says he can teach me how to do the same thing. I want to buy his course. And my mom starts crying. Wow. And I've shared this story before, but I'll always share it because I'll never forget how that felt. I'll never forget the embarrassment that I felt. Honestly, it was embarrassment. I was embarrassed and ashamed that I had put myself in a situation to make my mom cry about my future and about my path, my past forward. Or my path forward. But I ended up buying the course. My mom pitched in $100. My dad pitched in $200. I put up the other $300. I bought the course, and 4 months later, I was making $0 a month. 6 months later, we were doing $20K a month. So it just took off from there, and I went on to build, I think, 8 or 9 different agencies. We scaled a number of agencies to 7 figures. Ultimately, I fell out of love with the agency space. I realized it's a good stepping stone, but it's not the business that I'm actually looking for. It's not the business I want to spend the rest of my life building. And the entrepreneurs that I admire the most, they find something that speaks to them so deeply, they will do it for the rest of their life. And I did not want to run an agency for real estate agents for the rest of my life. And so eventually, we come into points in our life as entrepreneurs where we have to make hard decisions. And our success and our future is going to be determined by how efficiently and effectively and quickly we can make hard decisions. And I had this hard decision of, man, I've spent all this energy in the agency space, but I know in my heart I don't want to keep doing this. So what do I do? Because the path of letting go of the agency and going and pursuing something else is scary. What am I'm going to have to start all over again. I've made all this money in this space. I have all this expertise in this space. Am I just going to leave it behind? And the answer was yes. That's exactly what I needed to do. Right. And so I did. I left the agency space about a year ago, and I have not looked back. And now I'm working on software and building something that I could actually see myself wanting to work on for the rest of my life. And even if I don't make a fraction of the money I made in the agency space, I am fulfilled in such a more meaningful way than financially because I'm working on something I actually love. And that might be cliche, but it's something I learned the hard way. So that's a
That's
quick
very,
background, I guess.
yeah, no, for sure. That's very interesting as well. So going back to that whole agency game, building Estate AI along with these other businesses that you had, I think you mentioned you built 6. So are you saying that kind of that whole agency journey is not something you really enjoyed? Even when you were in the trenches building
It's a
and,
great
scaling?
question. I did enjoy it, but I enjoyed it because of the things I learned about myself. Like I learned what I was capable of going through. Really, that's what the agency taught me. I
Mm-hmm.
learned what I was actually capable of enduring, and endurance is a really valuable character trait for an entrepreneur. But I did not enjoy the actual business itself. I did not enjoy talking to clients. I did not enjoy sales calls, really. I did not enjoy managing a team of media buyers.
Mm.
I just didn't. I had fun with it for a while though. Like I want to be fair to the agency space because I don't want to. This is something I have to wrestle with now. Is like I don't want to be anti-agency, and I don't want to come across that way because in the first couple of years I did love it. I loved
Mm.
learning about business. I just love learning about systems and operations and the idea of the psychology of selling something. It was fascinating to me for a while. But eventually, I realized this is not my heart's true desire. But in the beginning, it was. In the beginning, I did enjoy it. I kind of fell out of love with it.
Fair
Hope,
enough. No, that makes perfect sense. Um, Going back to Estate AI as well, I know you were in talks of exiting that agency entirely,
yeah.
and then you mentioned you kind of have taken a step back from the whole agency game for the past year. So, is that something that's been sold already, or are you still in the process of finding a buyer? How's that working?
No, Estate AI. We can talk about that. That outcome. So, learned a lot of lessons that I think could be valuable to people here.
Mm-hmm.
We listed it for sale 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That's when I still had my youth in the WhatsApp profile picture you saw. That was before. You know why I looked young is because it was
Yeah.
before I tried to sell Estate AI.
No. Fair enough. I think it's
And
just the beard, though. To be fair,
the
aside
beard
from
the
that,
beard does it too.
yeah,
The beard does it
yeah.
too. Um, but we listed it for sale in January of 2023. And we had a buyer come to us within the first couple weeks. We ended up signing an agreement to sell the company for 2.1 million, I want to say, or maybe 2.3 million, which was amazing because we ran the
Mm-hmm.
business for 13 months and we did 2 million in revenue our first year, and then now we're going to sell it for 2 million. Like, awesome. Let's go. I was so excited. The problem is we went through 10 months of a sales process with stupid due diligence and all kinds of messed up timelines and inefficiencies on the buyer's end. And ultimately, the guy never came up with the money. Never came up with the money. And so we couldn't sell the business, but we spent a year trying to sell the business. And by then, we were just so removed and our heart was so removed from the business, we couldn't imagine stepping back in and running this thing that we were about to let go. It's like
Mm.
it's like you're I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a parent. If your child's about to go off to college and like you and your partner are getting ready to just, you know, uh, go run free and not have to like manage the kids anymore, and then all of a sudden your kids say, "Oh, we didn't make it. We're going to be spending another couple years with you." You're just
Mm.
like, "Oof." And you'll still put up with it because they're your true child, but in this case, my partner and I just did not want to step back into the business and we couldn't really see ourselves doing it. So we handed it over to somebody else and we kept a little bit of equity and we said, "Hey, you run the business, we'll help, but we don't want to run the business anymore." That was a terrible idea because um, this person was also running another company. And now they were trying to run two companies at the same time. So then they handed it over to somebody else too. And they said, "All right, you run the business." And that was a terrible idea because once you go through 3 leadership changes in a span of a few months, your team's so confused,
Yeah.
demoralized, and scared. It doesn't matter how good of a pitch you give them on where you're trying to go and what the new leader does. They've heard it all at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
they've lost faith. And when your team loses faith, the business is the business is bound to crumble. So, yeah, so that's what it ended up doing. It crumbled. It took maybe 6 months or so, but eventually, yeah, it basically crashed, went to a few $1,000s a month, and I learned the most valuable lessons that I perhaps will ever learn in my business career through that entire process. So I'm actually really grateful for it in retrospect. I didn't walk away with my 7-figure exit that I was hoping for, but I don't know if it was a business that deserved to receive a 7-figure exit. Honestly, I think there was so much we should have done better. There was so much I needed to learn, and had I walked away with a 7-figure check from that business, I think I would have tricked myself into believing that you can get paid for mediocre work, and you can get paid very, very well for mediocre work. And that's true sometimes, but I don't think it should be. And that's not the career that I want to have. So that's kind of the synopsis of Estate AI in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And I do want to understand a bit more about your journey with that agency, just because that's going to apply to where I'm at. I'm also in the local business agency game, and a bunch of my viewers are going to be in that same position as well.
Sure.
So give me the cliff notes of just starting that business in the first place, how long it took to even scale to the point you got it to.
Yeah. So originally I was running a white label company, smmafulfillment.com. I think that website's still up there now. You could check out smmafulfillment.com. And we were white labeling for this company called VZM Media, and they were a real estate agency. So we were doing their fulfillment for their real estate clients, and they were crushing it. Clients weren't leaving. Clients were happy. They were getting new clients every single month. They were just growing. And this guy who I was working with, the owner of this agency, he wasn't really sure why things were going so well. Like, he didn't know why it was working, but it just was. And I saw that as a massive opportunity, because if he doesn't even really know what he's doing or why it's going well, but it is, perhaps there's something there. So eventually I partnered up with him, and I just became a partner instead of just his white label. And then eventually I brought in Jared Curry, who was the CEO of Estate AI, and he was a friend of mine at the time. He had already scaled an agency to 7 figures, and he was really good at sales. My focus was more the back end. So I brought in Jared. I said, Jared, you can build a sales team here. We can scale it up like crazy. I'll take care of all the fulfillment. And so that's what we did. And in the first 90 days, we went from $15,000 a month in revenue to $150,000 a month in revenue in just 3 months. And then eventually, I think about a year later, maybe 13 months later, we did $292,000 in top line revenue. Of course, there's refunds and disputes and all that nasty agency stuff in there. It was probably more like $250,000. And yeah, then it took about another 13 months to go back to zero. Wow. So, and that's actually something Chamath Palihapitiya talks about is, and so I want to be clear in me telling that story. I hope it doesn't give the wrong idea to the viewer listening to this. Chamath talks about however quickly it takes a business to scale to its highest point, it will take that same amount of time for it to crash back to zero if it's not careful, if it's not built the right way. So scaling quickly is not something I'm ambitious for anymore. Like getting to 100,000 a month as soon as possible, it's not really my goal. It's about going as far as I possibly can and staying there as long as I possibly can. Rather than in the agency space, how quickly can you get to 10K a month, or how quickly can you get to 100K a month, only for it to crash just as quickly. And dude, this happens with every agency owner. Every single, I can't name an agency owner besides Stevie Johnson. I can't name an agency owner who works with local businesses and still runs a 7-figure agency that was doing it 2 years ago. I don't know of anybody. Yeah. Except for Stevie Johnson. And Stevie does it because the reason it's worked for Stevie is because he obsesses over product. Yeah. That's very He's true. The only one I know who does. So yeah, he's we scaled quickly, but I'm afraid scaling quickly is not actually the point, to be honest.
So you think if you scaled Estate AI in a different manner, like you didn't just do the kind of, fast launch and just kind of scaling it as fast as you can, you think that would have affected the outcome of it?
100%. I think the problem Like if we get to the first principle of what was the problem of estate AI, it's that we ran Facebook ads for real estate agents. Like that's it. Like, it doesn't matter how good we got at running Facebook ads for real estate agents. We're still running Facebook ads for an industry where the average income is $35,000 a year, and 87% of the people in that industry fail in the first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to sell a high ticket product to that niche is just very, very difficult. It's very difficult. If I were to
Yeah.
go back, I would actually have built a software company and solved a problem in real estate that was more software related. But I didn't see an obvious idea there. So we had to run the Facebook ads and we had to go that model. At least we thought we did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it definitely would have been a better business had we not focused so much on scale, and we focused more on sustain. And we actually built a culture and a product around how do we provide the most value to these people as humanly possible. And it's not that we didn't want to provide value, it's that we didn't obsess over it enough. Like you have to be incredibly obsessed over solving a real problem for your customers and doing it better than anybody else. Right? It can't just be a part of your culture, it has to be the entire culture. Jeff Bezos is probably my favorite entrepreneur, and he set out to build Amazon to make it the most customer-centric company in the world. That was his goal. Just make it the most customer-centric company in the world. And 20 years after starting it, he becomes the richest man in the entire planet because he actually made it the most customer-centric company in the world, right? So, yeah, I do think it would have been helpful, but ultimately, I think we needed a different product, a different solution, if we really wanted to build something amazing. Because the amazing companies in real estate are software companies. They're not marketing agencies.
Fair enough. So
Yeah.
I'm curious for someone watching who doesn't have a business, they want to get started with something.
Mm-hmm.
Would you still today advise that person to get started with SMMA, or would you suggest something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would. I still recommend the marketing agency
Mhm.
business model. So I do want to be clear on that to not lead people astray. But I would say learn from it what you need to learn from it. Go through the pains you need to go through, but realize it is a stepping stone. At
Yeah.
least I believe it's a stepping stone.
Right. Fair enough. So kind of get started, build your foundation in that business model, and then kind of look into other options after that.
Yeah, like I think getting to 7 figures in an agency and try to build the best product you can, because really what the agency can teach you is how to build a good product even when it's difficult, and that's business, right?
Yeah.
So if you can build a good product in the agency space, like you can build an amazing product in the software space. That's
very
belief.
interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, even just hearing that, because you're so right. You know, like Stevie Johnson, I've been following his stuff too. Service delivery, like just watching his videos, you could tell how much he cares about that. And then a majority, like 90% of the other agency owners, it's like, how can you focus on client acquisition, running ads, and then signing clients? And it sucks because that's where I'm also currently at. You know, last month was the first time where like I actually cracked like a decent milestone as well, just kind of in the trenches for the entire time. And then December was like, okay, you know, ended up running ads and kind of scaling a little bit. But then I still have that fear and stress of like building a good product, and I don't want to be one of those guys where I just keep signing and scaling, and then I haven't figured out the product part. So that's going to be one thing that's, you know, interesting to kind of figure out as well.
It's tough
Hopefully.
because to some extent you need data to build a good
Yeah,
product.
exactly. That too. Yeah.
And you have to test for people, and you have to try. But you don't want to deceive yourself that you're just getting more data, and really all you're doing is churning and burning, and that's
Exactly.
all. So it's a tough line. I think it's a bit of a gray area, to be honest.
True. Would you say you kind of have to go through that process of signing clients even though you don't fully know how it'll work out for them, and most
Yes.
likely they might not even end up getting results?
Yes, and you can always refund them if you need to.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like,
So that's good.
Take the client, take the risk, sell with absolute conviction, but if you don't deliver, do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do the right thing. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I would say that.
For sure. And I know you usually touch on like the different shiny business models whenever they start to become popular, like on your channel. Um, there's generally a new one every year, it seems like. For instance, this year's growth operating school communities. I know you touched on that. Last year, AI automation agencies. Do you have any predictions on what that shiny business model is going to be for 2025?
That's a good question. I really don't think of myself as somebody who has the awareness to give a good answer to this question. Like I don't watch YouTube enough. Well,
Yeah.
I watch certain things on YouTube. I don't watch enough like IPGO, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
IPGA, I don't even know what it is. I don't watch enough of that content to like really see what's happening. But I'll tell you what interests me is the mobile app game.
yeah.
And that's what I'm building. I mean, granted, I'm building a mobile app, so maybe it's just my bias, but I love that business because recurring revenue fascinates me. I never want to build a business that does not have recurring revenue. And code is becoming so democratized that anybody, bro, it's costing me like 15,000 to build an entire like fully fledged application for Android and Google Play, or for Android and Apple. And
Mm.
15,000 is like nothing. And these are like good designers, good developers. Like some of the best developers in France
Yeah.
are working with me on this. So I think because of how cheap software is becoming to develop, and because of the democratization of both the development side but also the distribution side with influencers. Like
Mm.
anybody, this video, let's say it gets 1,000 views, right? You can find people like Adi and go find all those guys in that niche, build an SMMA software, and then just like start to run. That's what we did with the Pointwise, the software
Yeah.
company, right? We
Yeah.
got it from 4K a month to 40K a month, really just through my YouTube channel and like a couple of other people's YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And like that, there's never been a time like this before to build software. From a complexity standpoint, it's much less complex than in the past to actually develop, and it's much more scalable in distribution, and it's much more cost effective in
Yeah.
distribution to where you don't need to raise tens of millions of dollars to build and sell a software and get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of users on it. So I think the mobile app space or just the software space is becoming really interesting because most importantly, and I'll bring it home with this, you actually can solve real problems with software. Like it is just the best vehicle to solve a real problem, in my opinion, is software. And Mark Andreessen said this 15 years ago. He said software is eating the world, and it still is. It has not slowed down. So
Wow.
um, that's, I don't know if that's a prediction, but that's a preference for sure,
Mm.
is software. I wish software became the SMMA because we'd
Yeah.
actually do more good in the world, um, with solving problems. And not to say people don't solve real problems with SMMA, right? Maybe it's just me and all the other SMMA owners I know. Maybe, with the exception of some, right?
Yeah.
There are some oddballs, and I think ultimately you do more good than you do bad,
Yeah.
and there's a bit of a sacrifice there that you go through. Um, but yeah, I think SMMA or software or mobile apps would be really interesting to see pop off. And there's people like Blake Anderson who are kind of pioneering this. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen him at all, but he's done, Brett Malinowski's podcast and stuff like
Mm.
that. Those guys are very, very smart, and he's built three different apps to 500K a month or something, or 300K a month, 400K a month. Cal AI does 1.1 million a month. So that process, I think, that they've pioneered there is incredible, and it's also very simple for somebody else to replicate. It's a little more cost intensive, though. You do have to
Yeah.
spend some money to build a software. That's the downside.
Fair enough. And I'm glad you actually brought that up because that does lead to my next question as well. I was going to ask like what you're currently up to is also considering, you're not too involved in the agency space. Going back to a point wise, I know you've talked quite a bit about that. I believe you have
Yeah,
equity in that company. You're
I
working on
did.
growing that. Oh, you
I
did. You
sold
don't.
it back. I sold it
Okay.
back
Okay.
to go all in. Not because it was a great, that was like the best business I've ever been a part of. A point
Wow.
wise, people loved it. The customers loved it. The founding team was great. It scaled very, very well. We got featured in Iman's course program, which was
Mm.
awesome. We got featured in Jordan Platin's program, Thomas Gannett. Like, it was amazing. But again, to me, where I'm at now, Adi, is can I solve this problem for the rest of my life? Do I want to solve this problem for the rest of my life? Am I obsessed with solving this problem? And what I'm working on currently, Iron, is something I'm obsessed with solving. It's something that I just actually love to focus on.
Is that the
Lead
mobile app as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But lead conversion for agency owners, I mean, I could spend a couple years on that, but I'm not so passionate about it that I'll give it my 100% all. Charlie Munger had this great quote. My dad texted it to me a couple weeks ago. It's something like, I'm going to see if I can find this actually.
Yeah, for
Let's
sure.
see if I can find this because I think this quote is worth it.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Charlie Munger as well. What a guy. Yes, here it is. In my whole life, I've never been good at something I wasn't very interested in. It just doesn't work. There's no substitute for strong interest. I'm finding that to be true. So there's no substitute for strong interest. And as much as I did love the software space, a point-wise just didn't have a strong enough interest for me to really see myself working on it for the next 5 to 10 years. So I sold back my equity, long story short. And still wish them the best. Awesome freaking guys, awesome company. And yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So going back to Iron, I don't know how much you want to reveal of this because I've been following your Instagram stories as well, and I think you've been like doing a bunch of surveys, like what color looks best, what button and stuff like that. So are you able to share a bit more about what that exactly is? That software?
Sure. Yeah. Iron is basically going to be a habit. It's going to be a social habit building platform. So what's a habit you want to build right now for the new year?
A habit that I want to build for the new year. A few things. So playing guitar every day, I'd say, is one of them.
Let's go.
Yeah. That might be the same for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, I could give that as an example. Playing guitar.
Okay. And what's a habit you want to stop?
A habit that I want to stop. Oh, definitely social media usage. I want to bring it down quite a bit.
That's a common one. Very common one. Okay. So let me ask you this. What do you think's stopping you from having lower social media usage right now? Like why do you think it's high as it is?
Yeah, to be completely honest and transparent, it's almost mindless, and that's what I hate. It's like I just pick it. It's just like I'm picking it up, It's not even like, oh, there was a thought that like, let me go on. If there was a thought that like, hey, I want to use Instagram, let me use it for 5 minutes, pick it up and then use it. That I like that better than me just mindlessly picking it up. It's not even like there's an intention there or thought,
So what Iron will be, I'm still figuring out the best way to kind of explain this, but I want to try to use you as an example here. Imagine if all the people in your friend network and family or anybody you wanted to, imagine all the people in your network saw how much time you spent each day on Instagram and it went out to them.
So it's kind of like an accountability thing.
Exactly. So it's like, have you ever heard of Strava or ever used Strava, the running app?
I don't think so. No.
Basically, it's a very simple app, but it's a $5 billion company. They combine running with a network, a social network. So every time you run, your run goes out to your network. They can see where you ran, they can see how far, they can see your pace. And you basically inspire each other and you make each other better because you always see your friends are running and it inspires you to want to keep running. We want to build the same thing, but with habits as a whole. So I could see, if we're friends on Iron, I could see your screen time, you could see mine every single day. And I can keep you accountable, you can keep me accountable. We can set a goal, we can keep streaks. You can see, man, Matt has a 30-day streak of playing guitar every day for 30 minutes. And I can see you have a 50-day streak of being below 3 hours of screen time or whatever every day. Yeah. And we can keep each other accountable. And it's based on a verse in the Bible, Proverbs 27:17, that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And so the thesis with this entire company is that we don't do the thing we want to do, but we do the thing we hate. And the thing we want to do, we don't do. The thing we don't want to do, we do. And it's because we lack accountability. And nothing works to get people, nothing gets people walking the way they actually want to walk as getting around other people who are lifting them up and keeping them up the whole time. The power of a community, the power of people keeping each other sharp constantly. I've just never seen anything like it in my own life. When I get around people who push me to be better, I become better. When I have accountability, I become better. And so that's the thesis with the app right now. We're building it. We should have it live in mid-February, hopefully, at least a beta version of it. And it all stemmed from a problem I was actually having myself, which is I had left the agency space, and all throughout late 2024, I felt completely lost. Like I woke up every day, my habits got really bad. I was spending a ton of time on YouTube, a ton of time on my phone. I was not going to the gym. I was running, but like once a week maybe. I wasn't following my diet. I was just becoming like a slouch. I was not making the most of my day. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, dude, I have all this potential in my life. What am I doing? Why am I just sitting here and wasting it away? Like what is happening? And I realized it's because I just lacked accountability. I was letting myself get away with it. If the people around me knew how I was spending my days, I would have instantly whipped into shape. And so what my roommates and I actually did, we made the beta version of Iron. We made a whiteboard in our one of our spare rooms in our house. We made a whiteboard and we put a number of habits on the whiteboard and we put each person's name. And at the end of each day, we had to go and we had to check or X that habit. So we had follow your diet, wake up before 7 a.m., go to the gym, no FAP, screen time, everything. And what happened is immediately as soon as we set up the whiteboard, all of us had like the most productive week we had in months because nobody wanted to be at the bottom of the whiteboard. Nobody wanted to be the one who was, oh, I broke my diet. Oh, I didn't sleep. Oh, I watched porn. Oh, I went on Instagram for 4 hours. Like nobody wanted that to happen. So we just immediately, like magic, started to become better. So that's Iron in a nutshell.
Dude, I've never heard anything like that. That's very cool. I could imagine that too, like in a group of entrepreneurs, just how great that would work, you know?
Right.
Everybody tracking their work and diet and everything else. That's amazing. That's going to do really well for sure. So you said February, that's going to be coming out.
February, the beta version should be out. Hopefully the full version will be out in like April or something, maybe March. But
okay.
Yeah.
So going back to, that time where you kind of mentioned, I've got a follow-up question on that as well, but where you were kind of waking up, engaging in all these bad habits and kind of falling off track and everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you think causes that? Because I'm looking at you and, you've built all these successful businesses and stuff. So just for us to kind of know and keep in track as well, it's like, what really causes that kind of downfall and kind of, not downfall, but like stepping off track and, losing all those good habits?
No, it kind of was a bit of a downfall. And I think it's important that I went through it so people can know, like, nobody is above that stuff happening. And I'm just a normal guy, right? Like, yeah, I built some businesses, but at the end of the day, I'm human and I'm subject to falling off the path just as much as anybody else. So hopefully that's both encouraging and also a bit maybe not frightening, but like, okay, let's be careful. I think what causes it is a lack of purpose, and I think a lack of purpose really stems from a lack of confidence. And so the purpose of Iron is to build a more confident world, because it's not that we don't know what we want to do. It's not that we don't have an idea of what we want to build or what we want to create. Usually we do know deep down, but fear is blinding us or inhibiting us from wanting to actually pursue it. And so I had all these dreams, but I let the negative momentum of fear just start to take me away from them. And I started to lose confidence in myself. And I started to just go down this negative spiral of like, man, I have these massive dreams, right? All these things I want to do and build, but they're almost so big that they make me a little bit afraid. And because the fear paralyzed me, I started to just go a little bit down slowly but surely, so that I would convince myself I'm not capable of doing this, so I might as well stop dreaming it, right? It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
You're afraid because of this amazing dream you have, And so then you feel like you need to become a person who could never accomplish such a dream, so you can convince yourself you don't need to go and pursue it. And so I think that's what caused it for me, a combination of a lack of purpose, but I really think that stemmed from a fear or a lack of identity. I think identity and how we view ourselves is actually it's the most important thing I've been learning recently, at least, as of late. Everything we do is a reflection of who we think we are. So if you get who you are wrong, you're going to get all the things you do wrong. And
Yeah.
if you get who you are right, then you'll see a life that is full of you doing the right things. It doesn't mean you won't slip. It doesn't mean you won't fall. But it all starts with identity. And I think that's what caused it for me, is I was becoming confused in my actual identity. And a lot of
Mhm.
that stemmed from fear.
Interesting. And another question, just kind of on that, because in one of your videos, you mentioned a time where you were almost disassociating, right? Because
Yeah.
I think you mentioned you didn't properly manage the stress in your life. And I actually saw that video before we started talking.
Mm.
And that's why I even reached out to you, actually, because I'm hearing that. I'm like, wow, that's actually very interesting. Um, and the reason I'm even bringing this up, because I know it's going to be very, very valuable for everybody listening to hear this as well. Um, and to be honest, over this past year, especially when I've been taking this whole agency game a bit more serious, I've been going through something like that as well, to an extent,
Yeah.
still going through. So I wanted to hear more about that. How did you go about kind of managing that? How did you go about fixing it? Are you still kind of in that phase, or how do you even get through? Especially speaking to me, speaking to everybody watching.
Mm. I think the root of a lot of that stuff was anxiety as well,
Yeah.
and that it was a defense mechanism that if I can disassociate from myself, I won't have to face myself, because I can basically pretend that that doesn't exist and I'm this other person almost, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's not like a multiple personality disorder or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's
Yeah.
not like a
Yeah.
schizophrenia, but it's like you don't know who you are. Going
Yeah.
back to identity, it's like I always described it as I felt like I was in a video game, and I wasn't actually. I was like controlling the character, but I wasn't the character. I was separate from the character. Weird stuff, dude. I'd wake
Yeah.
up and go see my mom, and like I would like, I know who you are. Mom, I know who you are, but I also feel like I don't know who you are. Super
Yeah.
weird. I don't know if that explains it at all, but
No, dude, because it even for me, like listening to that, like I'm like, dude, that makes so much sense. Over this past
yeah,
year, like me too, like I've been kind of in that same position as well. And you're
yeah,
100% right. It comes from the whole anxiety and stress that kind of builds up
yes,
from this game.
yeah, and I think so. I think there's two kind of solutions here. There's two paths I think that are equally important to getting through it. Number one, again, it was stress, right? So I would wake up every day. I was having headaches. I would feel disassociated, and all of that was happening on like a macro level. But then on a micro level, looking at screens all the time. Very,
Yeah.
very simple. But I was at the computer 10 hours a day.
Hmm.
Like, dude, I was a zombie. I was a screen zombie. So, of course, I started to forget who I was. I was
Yeah.
constantly just like, observing screens and light. And tactically, getting my sleep dialed in, looking at screens much less, and
Yeah.
eating clean food. So simple, I know, but when I really did that and I really got my sleep dialed in and I really got my screen time dialed in, I started to have a lot of progress in kind of recovering my true self. Um, so that was like the tactical micro stuff. Go to sleep, turn off all lights before 2 hours before bed. So
Hmm.
like 2 hours before bed, no overhead lights. I paid a high performance coach a lot of money, and this was one of the biggest things he taught me, is just turn off all your overhead lights 2 hours or more before you go to bed.
Hmm.
And just spend that time in like meditation or reading, and get a little like candle or a little like red LED light to light up your book, or get one of those Kindles and just read or meditate or just write, but do anything but look at screens. And that's going to set you up for a much better sleep cycle, because you're not going to bed stressed. You're going to bed with a little bit more relaxation. Then you're going to sleep better, and that sleep's the most important thing. Like,
Hmm.
if I'm sure everybody who's ever watched a high performance person talk, has always heard about the importance of sleep, but it's not just sleep. It's actually all starting with the nighttime routine. And so getting a good nighttime routine, so I could set myself up for really good sleep, that transferred amazingly to me actually getting rid of that disassociation. And then on a deeper level, I actually think a lot of it is a spiritual battle. I won't pretend to understand all of this. Spirituality is very new to me, but I think deep down it is a spiritual struggle. If there is a God, and if there is an enemy of that God, the number one thing the enemy can attack is your identity. He can get you to think you're somebody you're not. That's the number one thing he can come after, is who you are or who you think you are. And praying against it, finding God, honestly. That was the year I had it the worst. The very next year was the year I found God, and it just kind of went away. And I don't know if it was because of God or because of prayer or because of my habits. I don't really remember. But I just remember finding God was right around the time where it all happened to go away. So I don't know how exactly that all worked.
Yeah, that
I
makes
thank
sense.
God that it did. So those are kind of the different sides. I think there's a tactical, habitual side, and then there's a more spiritual component as well.
Yeah. And you talking about, I know you're a man of faith, and you're, talking about that consistently on your channel as well. Another thing that you've also talked about is being a nihilist for a period of your life.
Yeah.
You even started writing a book called Nothing Matters at All. So I was curious when I heard that, as an entrepreneur, building these huge businesses, finding success, what do you think caused that mindset at the time?
The nihilism.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. Probably low self-esteem.
Mm.
Yeah.
So low self-esteem. Why do you
Yeah,
think that caused it?
if you don't feel worthy, then you'll just choose to see everything as ultimately unworthy and nothing. And of in the grand scheme of things, unimportance, because you view yourself that way.
Wow.
So I think deep down it was an unworthiness that caused me to say, okay, well, it's easier if just none of this matters, because then it doesn't really matter who I am, because none of this matters in the grand scheme of things. Nihilism for me was I think probably a trauma response of some sort. It had to have been. It makes absolutely no sense. And I was a nihilist, dude. Like, I was writing a book about it.
Yeah. True.
Like,
yeah.
it makes no sense. Nobody, you know why? Because nobody can live that way.
Yeah.
Nihilism, for anybody who's not familiar, it's the idea that nothing matters. Ultimately, objectively, nothing matters. We're just here by accident, and that's it. And so it goes hand in hand with atheism, right? I was an atheist at the time too. There was a great atheist philosopher. Well, I don't know if I'd say he was great, but it was great to atheists, at least. There was an atheist philosopher who said, the only real question in life is whether or not you should kill yourself. That's nihilism. Because if nihilism's true, why do you still choose to wake up every day?
Wow.
And I think that's the thing about nihilism, is I don't know anybody who holds the belief of nihilism who actually can live it out.
Yeah.
Who can actually act as if nothing matters. There's something in us that causes us to think things do matter. Other people do matter. Our lives do matter. Our families do matter. It was impossible for me to follow out my own nihilism. That should have been evidence enough that it was false. It was wrong.
Yeah.
I couldn't live it out. Granted, there's sometimes I can't live out my following of Christ. So it kind of can go both ways, but I think they're a little bit different. But yeah, I think low self-esteem was the root of it all.
That's very interesting. And then going back to, your faith, and, you're constantly talking about Christianity and everything. How do you think all that's helped with your whole business journey and, all the success that you've really had?
It's a really good question. Well, got rid of the nihilism, which was helpful. Not that I was trying to get rid of the nihilism. I was actually
Yeah.
trying to embrace the nihilism. Like
Yeah.
I thought nihilism. I want to answer your question, but I have to just go back on this because it's funny to me.
Yeah.
Nihilism was like it became an antidote to my fear. It was like, well, nothing really matters, so I might as well, like, who cares if things go bad? Because nothing really matters. Who cares if
Mm.
I mess up? Because nothing really matters. It's not that far off from God's love. Who cares if I mess up? God still loves me. Who cares if I fall short? God still loves me. Who cares if I don't achieve everything I want to achieve? God still loves me. Like it's solving the same thing just in a much different way.
Yeah.
And this God's love is way more effective than this nothing matters. At least for me in my life, it's not even been close.
Mhm.
Um, and so how has connecting with God and following Jesus changed my business? Dude, it's changed everything. It gave me the confidence to pursue the dreams that I had, and it gave me the purpose behind it.
Mhm.
Because it's like to say nothing matters and then also to set out to build some massive company. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
If nothing matters, then
Exactly.
why are you doing this? Oh, because it matters to me. Well, why?
Yeah.
Why does it matter to you? Where does matter and meaning even come from?
Yeah.
Um, so finding God, or rather, Him finding me, however it works, it it gave me this confidence and this purpose of why I had these feelings in my heart in the first place. And it basically it illuminated them, right? Like I had these feelings and this stuff in here, but they were unenlightened, and they still are, right? I'm not enlightened now, and I've reached nirvana or anything like that. Um, but a lot of the things I had in my core of like, I want to serve other people, I want to make a difference, I want to be a good example to other people, but why?
Mhm.
God gave me that foundation. God's word, reading the Bible, changed my life, right? To this day, it's the most important habit I have every single day. Reading the Bible every single day. It's the most valuable habit I have. It gave me this explanation of why I feel the way I feel. And it started to give me counsel in what to do with that and how to leverage that and how to steward that appropriately. Okay, like you have a desire to serve other people and you have a desire for business at the same time. But part of your desire for business is to make yourself out to be this great genius that other people love and respect. And so you can get all these nice things and prove everybody wrong. But then also there's something in you that wants to build a business because you think you can really help people with it. And you
Mhm.
think you can get resources that will enable you to have a positive impact on other people's lives. And so then you have this like this angelic motivation, and then you have this devilish motivation. You have this spiritual motivation and you have this fleshly motivation, but they're at odds with each other. And if you don't understand this side, then you're ultimately going to succumb to this side. And so actually growing and learning about God and building a relationship with God helped me get more clarity on this side of things, which is the pure motivation for the desires I have. Like I think business is a great thing. I think it's a gift, but I think I didn't know how to steward it properly. And it's because I didn't understand the one who created business, which was
Mhm.
God. And so starting to see business in other people the way God sees business in other people just changed my entire point of view, and it brought clarity. It just brought a deeper sense of clarity to things that I already knew intuitively were true. Like Jeff Bezos became the richest man in the world for a significant period of time because he set out to commit to build the most customer-centric company in the world. He set out to serve people to the highest degree possible, and then he got paid incredibly well for it. And it's like, well, what does the Bible say about that? Jesus says, whoever wants to be greatest among you must become a servant of all. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying he's giving business advice there, but I do think there's a principle there, which is if you can really learn how to serve other people in some way, that actually leads to some sort of greatness, whatever that word really means there. That leads to some reward, that leads to some sort of return. If you
Mhm.
really learn how to serve other people, there's a great value in that. And then I study entrepreneurs like Bezos, and I see them living out this kingdom principle, this biblical principle that I doubt he's read the Bible. Maybe he has. I don't know. I won't guess. But seeing things like that where Bezos is embodying such a kingdom-based spirit in his business, and then he's being rewarded massively for it. Like stuff like that. It just brought a deeper level of knowing to my heart, to where like now I knew these things intellectually, but now I know them like internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm explaining that
No, it
well.
does. Yeah.
But that's what I think it's done for me thus far, at least.
Yeah. That's really great to hear because I was watching one of your videos. You were talking about how the Bible, Christianity, how all that's kind of helped you do with business, how it helps business owners in general. And even me
Yeah.
listening to that, like I'm, as of right now, I consider myself an agnostic, but I do see a lot of truth in every religion. Um,
Yeah.
and just hearing, you watching that entire video and hearing everything you talk about, I even found so much value from it.
Uh,
And just kind of hearing all these different things that you're talking about, how it applies to business owners, how it helps business owners. And I'm like, wow, that's just, amazing to hear even for someone like me.
mm,
So that's really great. And that's also another thing. I know me and you were talking about how, the WhatsApp photo and everything, you're also looking at a bit older now. I think the biggest thing is for you, it's like the way you speak. You don't speak like the, typical young person. That's one thing I love about you. And that's why I was so excited about this podcast as well, is because I've watched a bunch of your videos and like the way you speak, especially on your channel or even on this podcast. I know me and you are actually talking on this podcast, but even on your YouTube videos and your channel, the way you talk is like you're sitting right next to somebody and you're like, just sharing all this advice, sharing all this knowledge and wisdom that you have. And that's one thing I find so unique about you that I don't see in any other kind of, any of the other SMMA or agency or online business guys out there. And yeah, so just wanted to tell you about that, man. I love that.
Thank you.
I love that about you for sure.
Thank you.
It's really great. Um, and we can kind of bring this back to a question that I wanted to bring up. This wasn't something I had down, but I know we were having a conversation about coffee and how you've never had coffee. Well, you've had it two times, I think. So that
I've
energy
had it
level.
before, but like I don't drink coffee.
You don't drink coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, how would you say that energy level, how do you kind of have that energy level of, grinding and working without relying on anything external like caffeine?
I'll try to share a couple like just quick tips and tricks.
Yeah.
Again, it all starts with sleep, getting really, really good sleep. I don't set an alarm in the morning. I just sleep, and whenever my body wants to wake up, it wakes up. I don't set an alarm. I'm not a fan of alarms. What I am
Yeah.
a fan of is getting to bed at the same time every night. And then eventually you'll just have an average wake up time. So it's more about like the nighttime alarm than to me the morning alarm. So that's something that's helped me with sleep. Diet wise, no carbs until lunch or until dinner. I don't eat breakfast. I eat my first meal probably around 12 o'clock. And I try not to have any carbs. Lately, I have been having some rice with my meals, but usually I'll just have like beef and avocado or chicken and avocado. And then I'll eat a bigger meal later in the day. And I'll probably have a smoothie in there somewhere. So just getting my diet right and eating foods that don't make me crash has done so much. I used to eat lunch every day and then I'd have to nap for 30 minutes because
Yeah.
I'd eat crap, dude. And so that's been helpful dietary wise. I think there's a lot to be said for not eating until the afternoon, not eating until 1, 2, 3 p.m. because it takes so much of your body's energy to digest food. So if you aren't digesting food, you have more energy to sort of play with. And that's why you focus better when you're on a fast. It takes some time to get used to, but eventually you just become accustomed to it, and it gives you this different level of clarity and focus. And then outside of that, getting outside.
Yeah.
Getting outside and starting off with exercise. Starting the day off every single day with either a workout or a run or a walk. Today, of course, the day we do this podcast is the one day I didn't do that because I had a long night last night.
Yeah.
I have like one day a week where I break my schedule basically, and that was last night. But yeah, those things have helped me, and I think there's a belief component to this, which is if you think you need coffee, you'll need coffee,
Yeah.
and if you think you don't, you'll find a way to not. And so I think a lot of it is belief. Cold showers too. I take cold showers every day, and
Yeah.
they've been cold lately, dude. I don't remember. I did cold showers for a year straight, like 2, 3 years ago, and they were always like mid,
Hmm.
right? These lately, I've been out. It's like a plunge, bro, and I literally get a brain freeze.
Wow.
But that wakes me up every single day. That just wakes me up, hopping in the cold shower. So,
Mm.
yeah, man, I think probably the biggest part though is just the belief side. If you think you
Yeah.
need something, you'll need it. If you don't, you don't. Um,
I love it.
yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, man. Last question for you. What kind of legacy does Matt Shields want to leave?
That's so funny you asked that. I was just talking with a friend of mine, and he was telling me about legacy, and I was like, dude, I don't believe in legacy.
Really?
Like, no, what is legacy? I mean,
Um,
you tell me. What is legacy? Like, it's a genuine question.
yeah. I mean, for me, like, I guess it would be what you like. Are you a family man? Like, do you want to have a big family in the future?
I don't would say I want to have a big family, but I do want to have a family. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Um, for me, legacy, I guess, would be what, like, me being remembered even once I'm not here. Maybe not even to the world, because for me, I don't see myself building super big image, in this life, even in the online space or anything. But for my family and even generations down the line, so that would be the legacy for me.
Do you know who your great great grandfather is?
I know well, actually, I barely know his name. It's a very long name. I actually, yeah, no, I'm gonna say
Your
no.
great great, not
Oh
great
yeah, no,
grandfather. Great
Oh,
great.
no. Great, no way, I don't.
So that's only like 300 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, not to like ruin the vibe, but the reason I say it is I do think there's something important here because for a while before I started trying to follow God and build a relationship with God, I did want like I want to be remembered. And bro, you look at the ancient societies and how, especially in ancient Egypt, the pharaohs would all
Hmm.
try to build massive statues of themselves because they wanted to leave behind their legacy, and they would like compete against each other who could build the most statues while they're pharaoh, who
Hmm.
could build the biggest statues. Bro, nobody know like yeah, sure that we just when we hear pharaoh we just think pharaoh. Pharaoh's not
Yeah.
one person, it was like all of them.
That's very
nobody no
true. Yeah.
Nobody's like tracking the different pharaohs, and like some I'm sure maybe some people worship the pharaohs or pray to the pharaohs, I don't know, but
Mm.
even if they do, the pharaohs aren't here to feel anything from it. They're not around. So it's like if the whole world remembers you, it doesn't matter because you're not here. So I don't believe in legacy to like the point of being remembered because I don't think people really will. Like even Steve Jobs, bro, a couple
Mm.
thousand years from now, that's like maybe he'll get talked about on like an old podcast that studies entrepreneurs from the 2000s or something. But it's like ultimately legacy's I think not real, and I think even if it was real it'd be meaningless because we're not here to experience it. So like what's the point? But there's a caveat. It's not just a sour taste on this. I think when my buddy and I were talking about it and I challenged him on it, he said, "Yeah, I don't mean legacy like people remembering me. I mean legacy in the sense of what do I leave behind in the world that the world would not have received had I not lived? Like, what am I going to give to the world that they wouldn't have gotten unless I lived my life in the
Mhm.
way that I chose to? What do I want to give to the world, basically?
Yeah.
And that I believe in deeply because we all are given something to the people around us to some scale at all times.
Mm.
Um, but legacy and like being remembered, it doesn't mean anything to me anymore because I don't want to be remembered really. Like I used to. I don't know. I
Mm.
used to, and I used to be very afraid of death, and I think my desire for legacy was a reflection of my fear of death. Um, but I've lost both those things. Like I'm more curious and excited to die now than I would say I am afraid. Don't get me wrong. If somebody came and put a gun to my head right now, I'd probably start sweating. But but I'm also like kind of curious. Like yo, like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go meet him, dude. I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not ready right now in this moment, but like part of me is, part of me is like, yo, let's go. And then the other
Oh, that's
part's like,
funny.
hold on now. He's got me here for a reason.
Yeah.
I hope. But yeah, I think the only person who's truly going to be remembered for forever, to my opinion, is God
Mhm.
and Jesus. And so living to try to honor his legacy rather than create my own, I think has been a much healthier way for me to view my life and my purpose. He's already established the best legacy ever.
Mhm.
Love people so much you're willing to die for them, even if they're the ones who kill you. I can't top that. I have no interest in trying to top that, dude.
Yeah. No,
But
fair.
if I can try to honor that in some way with my life, awesome. I'll do my best, I guess.
I love that. That's awesome, man. It was really great having you on and just kind of picking your brain, getting all that knowledge from you, and then hearing all your wisdom. Do you have any last words for the audience? Any piece of advice that you'd like to give the person listening?
I think I have something.
Let's go. Grabbing the books.
I think I have something. Let's see. I just flipped over into a page. I'm just going to read a quote from this book I'm reading. This is called Abba's Child
Mm.
by Brennan Manning. Amazing book. I'm only like 20 pages in, but amazing book. So I'll leave off with this quote if that's cool. It's a little bit long.
Of course. No, go for it, man. Of course.
Over the years, I have come to realize that the greatest trap in our life is not success, popularity, or power, but self-rejection. Success, popularity, and power can indeed present a great temptation, but their seductive quality often comes from the way they are part of the much larger temptation to self-rejection. When we have come to believe in the voices that call us worthless and unlovable, then success, popularity, and power are easily perceived as attractive solutions. The real trap, however, is self-rejection. As soon as someone accuses me or criticizes me, as soon as I am rejected, left alone, or abandoned, I find myself thinking, well, that proves once again that I am nobody. My dark side says, I am no good. I deserve to be pushed aside, forgotten, rejected, and abandoned. Self-rejection is the greatest enemy of the spiritual life because it contradicts the sacred voice that calls us the beloved. Being the beloved constitutes the core truth of our existence. A quick interpretation of that for me is, God made us out of his overflowing love. So at the end of the day, we are a representation of God's love, no matter how far away we think we are from that. We are someone and something that God loves so much, he decided to make us, and he made us out of his love. So rejecting that and condemning ourselves is the most dangerous thing we can do in this life. It's the most dangerous, and we'll use business and success and followers and achievements to try to outwork our self-rejection, but it's impossible. It only multiplies it and makes it more scary. So I would leave people with that to get philosophical and spiritual.
There you go.
To take us home. Thank you for
That's
having
amazing.
me, brother. This was
Of course,
super
man.
fun.
Thanks for coming on.
Really,
For
really
sure.
enjoyed
I know
it.
people are gonna benefit so much from this conversation, everything that you've had to share. So once again, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys drop a like, comment, go to Matt's channel. Everything's going to be linked below. And we will see you in the next one.